Hi, everyone. Welcome to Party Like a Marketer, the podcast dedicated to cannabis marketing, PR, and storytelling, produced by the Cannabis Marketing Association. We are so excited to be back for season 2 and can't wait for you to see all of the new guests and content we have in store. My name is Lisa Buffo and I am your host. You can follow us on Instagram at Party Like a Marketer and at Canna Marketing, and you can find me at Lebuff, and we'd be happy to connect with you. Today's guest is Arundhati Dandapani, and she's the founder of Generation1.ca, a platform that connects newcomers to brands and industry through data storytelling. She's the CIO at the Marketing Research Intelligence Association in Canada, as well as a board member of the Institute for Certification of Computing Professionals. She's an action-led research association leader, and she cares about connecting data insights professionals in unique ways. Our conversation for this episode is focused around Arundhati's research in the cannabis industry. What can cannabis brands look like? What can cannabis brands learn from digging deep into data? And what does the future look like? Don't forget, for more insights, to join us at this June's Cannabis Marketing Summit on June 8th through 10th. You can find out more information at thecannabismarketingassociation.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of Party Like a Marketer, the cannabis marketing podcast, where we focus on talking about best practices in cannabis marketing and communications and telling the stories of those who are working in this space. Today's guest is Arundhati Dandapani, who is a Canadian-based market researcher. And she's going to tell you a little bit about some data and what she has learned today as well. So Arundhati, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to connect again. I love what you're all doing. Being in the research association space, being a research association leader, so happy and honored to connect with you. And you've recently participated in one of our events, so really excited that you're doing this. And thank you for the invite.
Yes, thank you. I had a blast at that event. So first, tell us a little bit about what you do. Tell us a little bit about MRIA and give our listeners some background into you as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been very much in the, in the media and publishing industries back close to 3 decades, but then moved closer into market research more in the last 6 years, when I found that there was a lot of lack of communication between the marketing function and sales function, as well as the publications. And so the disconnect between content and audience and audience measurement really baffled me. And we never got to know why some books had higher print run than others. So entering the research space, I found that yes, there's a lot of different industries, a range of high to low regulated industries, and in Canada, about 3 years ago, there was a lot of excitement around cannabis becoming fully legal. And although it's been around for a very long time, it's kind of almost seen as a mature industry. It is a mature industry. The legal market is just about coming through its own in Canada. So it was an exciting industry to look at and to see how they were really trying to blaze new trails. And so my work has mostly been focused on the research and with different small startups, big organizations as well. And I found that the nonprofit association space is where I truly belong and make an impact. And I think that and to be connected with such marvelous individuals as yourself, who insights really serve the marketing function, and that's why it's a true privilege to be in such an industry that's vibrant and thriving, and depends on industries such as the cannabis industry, such as the marketing industry, such as the other numerous industries, to really tell meaningful stories to our different stakeholders.
Meaningful stories is definitely the key, and I think all good marketing is good storytelling, and having data and good research is almost a first step in making sure you're reaching the right audience. But before we jump into that a little bit, tell us a little bit about MRIA specifically and your role there.
Yes, thank you. So it's the Marketing Research and Intelligence Association. It's a member-based nonprofit association that unites and connects research professionals across the spectrum of industry. It represents all aspects of the market research and business intelligence and social research industries, and as it evolves quickly to adapt to how industry is changing and how industry is moving so quickly. I mean, we see a lot of shifts in the landscape itself and the competitive landscape, and I think the importance of community and the importance of association is really important to industry in helping connect the buyers with the sellers and to grow the value of the marketplace through meaningful opportunities, resources, and culture. So I think that's what we strive to do. And my role as the chief editor and intelligence officer, CIO, involves we deal with a lot of member data, but also other data, and as well as trying to build an architecture of how the culture should look like, how the industry should look like, and how it should adapt, and where we should focus our strengths on, and where we should focus on our strengths and where we should focus our energies on as the market adapts. And we're seeing a lot of new players in the market and attracting new kinds of clients to the industry, new different sectors, especially the cannabis sector. Insights is pretty, I mean, I don't want to say it's pretty new to them, but it is. So
yeah,
it's these opportunities, and then you have these big other tech firms and how technology is really helping the research industry. So it's trying to connect all these different moving parts, and this is what really excites me, and it's part of my everyday. So it's a true honor to talk about that and to be part of that move.
totally. That's awesome. So, can you talk a little bit about what can market research tell us about the cannabis industry as a whole, and maybe just preface it a little bit with how MRIA, I guess maybe how and when MRIA got into cannabis, and then what research is saying about, high level, what is it saying about the industry, and maybe particularly in Canada, if you have that lens.
Yeah, so the MRIA particularly, I mean, like any good association is trying to wants to keep track of the best practices and as the legal cannabis industry evolves, and for an industry as fast moving as this, to have a set of standards is not necessarily the best. I mean, the most pragmatic or the practical way out for most companies. So coming out with guidelines and good practices which are adaptable and moldable to the different organizations' business objectives and the scope of that solve the scope of their research questions, and that really solves their specific problems. I think that's the value add and the service that we offer in terms of if a company is looking to do some research in the cannabis space, yes, we can guide and advise them on, okay, here are the best practices. We can understand the scope of problems they're facing. We can connect them with other participants in the space across depending on what area of the research for example, they're trying to choose an online sample provider to conduct an online survey about a certain topic, that's possible. Or if they're looking for a major study, the largest Canadian study on cannabis consumers, we can connect them with that. Or if they're looking for some for insight on point of sale data, we have partners in that space as well. So connecting them with them, and then so the best practices will really differ, or the good practices will really differ based on where they're coming from and what kind of research they're looking to do. So, and there's qualitative research, there's quantitative research, and then there's this, there are so many other aspects broadly, and then there are so many other aspects of hybrid and multi-method and multimodal research that is really that really requires a lot of complexity, nuance, and granularity that can only come when we do one-on-one consulting with them, or try to see what they want to achieve with their research. So yes, I mean, I think it's always good to have an association that lobbies for you, that protects you, that protects all participants in the research chain, and that is aware of the regulatory landscape, that is aware of the level of innovation that or the constraints to innovation that exist, and that can help and protect the different participants in the research process. But I think three things stick out. Like consumers are always concerned about safety safety. And we want to make sure that all our participants our research participants are aware of that. And throughout the research process, we need to put in guidelines on how they're communicating safety and proper sort of education and information to these different touch points. And I think access to varied points of data and makes a better sense of the picture of the marketplace. And I think, so we are globally a $90 billion plus marketplace. And I think attracting the investment of fast growing industries like cannabis can really maximize the opportunities of both industries. And there's a lot in the way of compliance and regulations, and a lot of these ERP or enterprise resource planning and non-plant touching companies, they don't have to worry about too much of or the challenges and opportunities they face with compliance are different from what plant touching industries face. So then we have so there's technology, big data, or statistical software companies. So they have different best practices. So we must leverage this, I think, this advantage to really grow the knowledge around the industry. And I think there's a lot of generosity in these cannabis tech companies willing to share their data. So we can really understand the problems facing the industry. And we need to use our researchers, the industry of researchers, to really be able to help us connect the dots and across these different these points of data, so we can tell the right stories. And I think more Destiger from Cresco Labs at one of our sessions, he built a kind of a tent or a pyramid of data maturity for organizations. So I think that was useful in helping organizations decide their their data strategy as they navigate both big and small data in this rather disparate marketplace. But yes, I will refer to the other participants as well. But I think this is a really great question. I think that the future is bright. There's more collaboration, and cannabis has really shown that for more industries, and especially through the pandemic. And we can talk about that later. But I think yes, broadly, we can solve better problems together, and there's a lot of creativity and innovation when a highly regulated industry and a low regulated industry, self-regulated industry interact with each other. And I think there's actually fireworks. So you can see it. You can see it in seminars like the one we just conducted. But curious, any other thoughts? Any other comments? Would you have any?
So have you seen in your research and in your work? Have you seen any? And I'll leave this open-ended. But have you seen any trends or data that surprised you? Any storylines out there that you see as a kind of overarching theme, or something that you've been digging into more that might have been different than what you've expected? Because what I'm trying to tease out is some data points for our listeners, because there is such a need for the information out there. So anything you've seen that's been is worth sharing.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the fact that despite its newness, it's sustained success in the span of 3 years here, but longer where you are has been a surprise and a model to follow. So I think what has been surprising has been how it's adapted to changing market demands, how it's going to market, the alliances it's building, these equity, sustainability, and governance models it's trying to build. But I think all of this comes from its being rooted in community that's very conscious about the culture it creates around personalization, safety, and education. And that's precisely why it's able to house so much dissent and diversity of opinion and data. I mean, when Cannabis 2.0 came to Canada, we could now touch, feel, smell, vape, or apply cannabis. And this was this brought a lot of expectations and anticipations to the marketplace. And one of the surprises
Can you just elaborate on Cannabis 2.0 for those who don't know what that was?
Yes, so it was a year into adult use legalization, new and diverse product formats hit the market. We had chiefly flower market. We know Canada and the US are both chiefly flower-driven markets, but Cannabis 2.0, which marked 2 years of legalization, we had other formats enter the marketplace. So there were edibles, there were vapes, there were edibles, there were topicals, and everyone concentrates, and people could now. I mean, the rollout was a bit criticized because the provincial rules differ across the country. Mm-hmm. So, but format remained the second most important factor affecting purchase decisions. So it was important to understand how people were receiving Cannabis 2.0. Now, just a few months into cannabis, that happened in October, November, December, and then the pandemic hit us. So COVID-19 just threw a lot of new surprises. And I think the surprise there was really how the story of the success of vapes vapes really took off, close on the heels of the vaping crisis down in the US, where there's a lot of concern and around safety and inhalation and using vapes. But I think this was one of the surprises, because also not just because of that, but also because consumers, according to Vivi data, which is the largest consumer study on cannabis consumers in Canada, they report a negative impact of cannabis consumption on the consumption of vapes. Now they report a negative impact of cannabis consumption on things like even drinking alcohol, and which is why, again, cannabis is seen as
so you're saying cannabis consumption went down because of, when you say negative impacts, can you clarify what that means?
Yes, sorry. So the more they consume cannabis, the less they consumed the vapes or or alcohol. It didn't create a desirable effect, and it didn't go together. And we've seen.
And can you clarify, vapes, are those the tobacco-based vapes like Juul?
Yes. And I think that signified a huge health and wellness benefit, or kind of or where the market was going. And one of the other surprises right here is, I mean, we have a huge rec market, so recreational user base, and that's currently dominant. I think it's 60-30, and
60 rec, 30 medical.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's the great thing about that is that, or I guess the surprise there is that these are not very regular users. The rec users are not very regular. Maybe they 23% of them they consume.
In Canada?
Yes. It's more maybe less than once. It used to be weekly, used to be the top use of regular use in 2019, according to Vivi data, in 2019, and then in 2020 it moved. Now the most regular use of these rec users is noted as less than every couple of months. So I think that the frequency has gone down.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but they still remain the dominant, but their frequency has gone down. So I think I don't know. I think it speaks to the benefits, maybe, or perhaps the microdosing and the information around savoring it for its users. And but I think it's the health and wellness the side. Population that's more driving potential users, that's more attractive to the potential users. Potential users are more concerned about the health and wellness uses of cannabis, and I think, and this is what and this is where and this is particularly driven by the 45 plus age group who are increasingly this largest they're driving adoption in this space. And I think that's another thing is about 1 million CBD users entered the market, and this is observed by both our Canadian colleagues at Vivi data, but also this is during COVID, and also our partners and our colleagues at High Yield Insights in the US. So
that's
I think there is some similarity. Yes, that's some similarity in some data points there, and I think this really provided for some interesting insight around the health and wellness space and opportunities there in terms of potential use. So I think potential users are really potential use again around pain remedy and pain and around relieving, I guess, turning off from opiates, which is again another big separate problem here, especially in the West. So I think this has been interesting, and this has been surprising, the potential rise of the health and wellness consumer, and we've been hearing it from every major cannabis research supplier, and it's been worth noting, and it's been worth studying. It is not uncommon knowledge that, I guess, stress, boredom, and social isolation were the increased reasons for consumption during COVID. But according to Vivi, about 1 in 10 consumers turned to cannabis during the pandemic. So I think that's
1 in 10 who had not been consuming before.
Yes. No, one in 10. No, 1 in 10 overall had been turning to cannabis, whether they used it or not. So I think that was kind of
specifically to deal with stress and
yes,
isolation and boredom. Okay, that makes sense.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think the opposition, one other thing that has really played in people's favor, although, Canada is different from USA, because Canada, it was more a government mandate, and in the US, it was more active resistance. People voted in change. But here, support for legalization has increased over the past 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020. So it really has
within Canadians already.
Yes. And although people think or hope that, or hoping for the elections in the US to really turn the tables over, and how the federalization of the drug would really open business and open business across borders, and again grow the market exponentially. I think what it looks like is that the focus might be just on decriminalization rather than on growing the business, growing the category as a business. And I think this is what perhaps concerns several in the industry, and in terms of, or I mean, it could be that finite innovation and regulation, but and I think, I mean, it's been a success story despite the caveats and the criticisms out there. But there is always scope for opportunities, and I think people are trying to see how to best to maximize the business opportunity here from this industry, while also being, while not taking away from the other efforts in terms of advocacy and equity and sustainability within the cannabis space. So I think.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the health and wellness benefits, and those who have never tried it before starting there, I think that is really speaking to what the Canna Curious are looking for. Those who have been interested and might be willing to try it, but they're not going to be that necessarily regular, everyday experienced user, but they are moving away from, like you said, nicotine-based vapes and opiates, and trying these new methods and getting into cannabis sort of slowly but surely in that category as their first step. And I think that's a really untapped potential market that we're now seeing brands in the US pay more attention to, and businesses, I think, as a whole pay more attention to, where, in the early days of the industry, certainly in Colorado, there was a lot of focus on that mid-20s male who was consuming a lot and purchasing a lot. But now we're seeing, as there's more different types of people come in, the marketing being expanded and the research, I think, backing that up and showing that in a way that almost felt like an educated guess before. So that's interesting to see that you're seeing that as well. Yeah. So one of the other questions I have for you is that, how can marketers use data and research to solidify their cannabis marketing strategy? And if you have any examples or have worked with any brands that come to you for information, how can these businesses use data and research to improve how they communicate with their customers?
Yes, and I think this is a really interesting and very important, critical question for most brands and most companies. I think the reason why also I held the seminar was to represent the real data diversity and insights in the cannabis space, both in Canada and the US, and was hoping that we'd be able to figure out or tackle the sticky question of what's truth and what is perception, to really understand what are the kinds of insights we should dig for in this space. So I think we have the consumer insights, which you've seen a bit of. Then we have the product and patient insights, which are also coming. I mean, a lot of pharmacies do this themselves. A lot of insights companies do this themselves. A lot of B2B research involves this. And then you have product insights, which are insights about use and effects, which some companies are doing at scale, like our friends our colleagues at Strainprint. And this is informing how brands are making decisions about and from both the illicit and the illicit markets. So they're tracking, they're recruiting participants and tracking their use and the effects of certain products on their well-being, and trying to match consistency and trying to see if now these are plants. Plants are so unpredictable. Yes, consumers want to know what terpene is there on their product label, but trying to understand how to put it together and to see whether this drug can be relied on consistently for the same dosage, and is what they're trying to do when they're trying to do product insights. And I think that's an interesting category to really try and leverage opportunities for brands. I know there's a lot of perception that there's not enough research about brands, and that the biggest competition is the illegal market. But I think that's slowly closing in as more brands try to take this opportunity to do more research around product insights. And it's not just product insights. insights, they should also they should be able to marry the consumer insights, the patient insights, the product insights, and the point of sale data, and also the enterprise resource planning data, which is that big data which people like Cresco Labs are doing. And I mean, there's a place for what kind of data you need, but even our partners at Headset, or our colleagues at Headset, they provide a lot of interesting information about the how retail is doing across the provinces. So that really helps consumers. Helps retailers grow their brand and know where the opportunities and the risks are. So there's a huge opportunity here for brands that really align themselves with the education, but also the customer experience. And customer experience is something we're talking about in every sector. And this is changing with COVID, because it's becoming, customers are becoming more fragmented. You don't know how the pandemic has affected them individually or their business, and trying to reach them is harder. But the job of brands now is to elevate customer experience at every touch point, which is it's physical, right, or digital. And so and I think one more thing that insight that really shook the boat for many people or many brands is the consumer level of awareness and confusion around THC and CBD. And both Vivida and High Use Insights pointed that out. They had similar research on how that ambiguity is really what brands should capitalize on by creating more sessions, educational sessions or events around what the different uses are of the different terpenes, what the different are of the different products. And I think THC and CBD are just basic. There's so many hundreds of cannabinoids that are unutilized, right, that brands don't really know too much, aren't really exploiting too much. So I think, I think in terms of marketers should really leverage the stories by being on the same page with the consumers. And the way they can do that is by knowing when to use what data. And I think these different sections that I mentioned, the product insights, the consumer insights, the patient insights, and the ERP data are really going to help them paint a fuller picture of the consumers. Yes, one thing I've seen less of is the qualitative research. I mean, there's more. I mean, a lot of it is being done, but we're not seeing more of that. The results of that, because I think that would definitely help provide a more fuller picture. And whether this is with opinion leaders, business leaders, but also with consumers. And I think we need both sides of the story to understand the challenges and opportunities.
That's a really good point. And I think as an industry, we all together have to solve the education gap problem. And I think when you've been in it for a while, it's very easy to think, oh, THC, CBD, that's so basic. But it's really not necessarily obvious to the average consumer out there. And so it is on the brands and it is on the leaders in the industry to educate about that so that consumers can make informed decisions when they're making products. And something I think we saw at your conference and as a trend in the industry in general is these more niche and sophisticated products where they're able to say, you know, fast acting, you're going to feel this in 15 minutes, or fast acting, and it's going to help you fall asleep. And so the marketing and the messaging is getting more targeted as far as the effects, the timing, and what it's going to feel like or what it's going to do. So I've seen a trend where they're moving a little bit away from kind of the scientific or industry jargon and using, effect-based terms to describe what's going on. But that's often not enough, where consumers are going to the retail, point of sale and saying to the bud tender, how does this work in 15 minutes? How is it going to impact me? Why is it going to feel this way? And we as an industry need to be able to provide that level of education and really elevate, as you said, for brands, the consumer experience at all touch points, starting with product quality and efficacy. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let's see, what else? What ways do you believe that marketing will continue to grow the cannabis industry in the future? And what do your findings tell you about potential growth? Where's the opportunities there, and what are you seeing?
Yes, and I think this is going to be it's going to be, the future is again going to be rooted in data, and trying our best to marry these data and insights firms with real cannabis and with cannabis clients and cannabis companies and cannabis brands and LPs, and not just them, but those participants across the value chain is really going to help us understand and enhance the customer journey, whatever our businesses or organization is doing in the space of cannabis. And I think we need to be aware of how we are communicating the disasters as much as how we are communicating the success stories. And I think there is varied levels of caution and risk taking towards consumption and adoption of these different cannabis products. It's we know we have a very fragmented consumer base, but and there's old consumers and then there's new consumers, and it's much more complicated than that, or it's much more granular than that. And we had that story. We heard that story from, I think, Jean Le Pen about how the 3-year-old who consumed 400 milligrams of THC-filled sour Skittles really splashed the headlines and really caused a lot of concern and anxiety, and put again it created a worry about the industry and how it was being projected, and how the points of access to legal products versus illegal products, like those things vary audiences and vary people about the industry. So I think the more we're able to understand why this is happening, and to be able to rectify the problems in terms of safety and making sure safe products are available to the right audience, and making sure the underage consumption does not happen, and all of that is really going to be the key here. But also in how we communicate that to people who are reading this news about the disasters and the successes. I mean, the focus here was that the problem here was that the child should not have been in the radius of that product, and it was an illegal product. I mean, it had 400 milligrams of THC kept in the radius of that child, and there were many problems there. And I think how we communicate the story to audiences is going to be increasingly important. And again, we're going to have to rely a lot on good data, and we're going to have to rely a lot on educators, especially cannabis educators, to really bridge the knowledge gaps. But in terms of that's why we have to have these guidelines in place. And when we're doing research, we need to have these age gates, and we need to ensure that our respondents are meeting these certain criteria. We need to have nurses or medical assistants or doctors, physicians on hand, and make sure that there's a at least there's a 24-hour checkup, or even after, depending on the project, just to make sure that there's been no negative harms of the research project that's happened. And I think the marketing will continue to just grow the industry. We need to be better data storytellers and be like journalists, but also be like marketers. So there's the truth, which is the voice of journalism, and perception, which is the voice of marketing. And blending both with good data is really going to give us the boost and maximize the business opportunity in ethical ways.
I hear that. Okay, cool. Where do you see the industry growing where do you see the industry going within the next year or the next 5 years?
So I think, yes, this is something I've tried to, this is a very interesting category. And we've seen, Cannabis 1.0, which was chiefly flower driven. Then we saw Cannabis 2.0, which was with all these diverse formats entering the market, newer to Canada, I mean, longer there in markets like Colorado, and as but in the US. And then there's Cannabis 3.0, which is now where how technology and cannabis are intersecting to really offer real-time data, like we saw our colleagues at Strainprint or at Headset or at Audacia Bioscience, which is another company that does a lot of virtual clinical trials. I think, and also use the effective use of, now I know Mo is going to criticize this, but effective use of AI-powered data mining and Internet of Things is really going to improve the personalization of the experience in terms of making recommendations to cannabis buyers or legal cannabis buyers online and offline. And I think one of the consumer dichotomies that we got to, Vivian Wilson actually pointed this out in her presentation, was the online consumers are drifting more towards the illicit sources rather than the legal online sources, because they're more attracted towards that, and they feel like they're getting more information and they're getting more a better experience there. So I think, and she's tried to combat that, and she gave a great presentation on that. So I think the future of retail, e-tail, that understanding the digital space better, providing a more fuller customer experience, and taking advantage of Cannabis 3.0, which is this mix of technology and cannabis to really consolidate all the data we have and really understand the consumers at a drop down through data visualizations and at a really granular level. It's going to really help us. And I think that's where market research and the new market research, which is the big data and all of that, or the AI and analytics, are going to combine and going to find a lot of opportunities in trying to understand the evolving consumer. But then, and then the last, I think, 5 years, you mentioned 10 years, Cannabis 4.0, which is tapping into the hundreds of cannabinoids that people don't yet know about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still trying to chart what difference has if the ambiguity has changed about THC and CBD. But once that has been overcome, then I think there's opportunities for brands like Shoppers Drug Mart in Canada. They made a lot of strides in trying to partner with companies like, I think, True Taste Technologies, but also this to try and harness other cannabinoids. And I've heard of some LPs who are doing it. They're harnessing into other cannabinoids to curate better experiences for users and try to grow their competitive edge. And that's where maybe the brand memorability and all of that could, when Cannabis 4.0 conveys some sense of safety, because we're relying on other cannabinoids that are not just seen as black or white, like, THC, CBD, I think that's when maybe branding and maybe creativity and more differentiation will be possible, and where competition will be more vibrant, and it might be seen as safe, and people won't be misled, and there might be lesser problems. So in short, I guess the future looks bright with that. I mean, the health and wellness space is going to continue to drive innovation. I mean, it's valued at $4.3 billion currently over here in Canada, but I think and 4 in 10 users are using it as a remedy for depression and other ailments. So I think there's a huge opportunity in this space, especially with Cannabis 4.0. I don't know when we'll get to it. I mean, we just about succeeded with Cannabis 2.0, or succeeding at it, and there's still a long way to go according to retailers across the country in different provinces. But I think when we get to 4.0, we'll reach a truly competitive and collaborative marketplace that's going to harness our full potential. At least that's what it looks like. What do you think?
I would agree with that. And I liked how you framed 4.0 with the other cannabinoids, because I think we're seeing some brands start to push it now and start to maybe anticipate it and get out ahead of it a little bit. But it is, at least in the consumer's mind, quite far away. And I think quite a complex concept to understand. And I mean, when I have conversations with people, I still have to tell them, you have an endocannabinoid system. Part of why this works and cannabis works for so many different ailments and so many different medical conditions is because you have a system in your body designed to be a receptor for these cannabinoids, of which THC and CBD are just 2 of hundreds. So we really are just scratching the surface of it. And I think it's a very exciting, the data is showing us, my felt experience in the industry is showing us, and what I've learned from consumers, friends, family, the Canna Curious that are now becoming kind of cannabis total adopters is definitely leading in that direction. So I agree that I think the future is bright, and it'll be interesting to see the innovation, the data, and the trends that come out of it. But it's moving quickly, as we've all said, and I think it's just going to continue to pick up. And certainly here in the US, 2021 has felt a bit different now with our change of government and a potential path towards some form of a decriminalization or legalization opportunity at that federal level. So we'll see, but I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Arundhati. How can our listeners connect with you or find you? Any, plugs you want to give for yourself or MRIA before we leave?
Oh yeah. Check out our website. Find me on LinkedIn. Check out MRIA on Google. Or check out the other platform. I did generation1.ca, which also hosts a lot of stories. It's more like curates stories and research, and connecting brands with newcomers, and that's where there's three buckets: newcomers, nonprofit associations, and cannabis. And I found that the levels of stigma varied across these three. And I think that was just it's just, I love when there's a lot of collaboration across sectors and industries. And I think that the best way to be data driven is to connect through an association like ours. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn and or on you could connect at, you'll find my email on the website as well. So check out mria.arim.ca and Arundhati at generation1.ca. And I'm looking forward to all the research opportunities and all the research collaborations that all are different, and how we can help, how our insights can serve the marketing community better. So get in touch and drop us a line and let us know what projects you're working on and how we can grow the industry together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here. And for our listeners, you can find us at thecannabismarketingassociation.com. And we're on Instagram at Party Like a Marketer and at Canna Marketing. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, we're across all social media platforms, and would love to hear your feedback and suggestions. And we'll see you at next week's episode. Thank you.